Atlanta just added over 64,000 new residents in a single year, fueling a skyline of cranes and opportunity. But beneath that boom, the metro's outward sprawl is creating hidden pressure. As commutes stretch longer and traffic becomes a daily invisible rent, what happens when a city's record growth becomes its own strain test? The answer is not as simple as success. 5,285,000 people now call Metro Atlanta home. In just 12 months, the region welcomed another 64,400 residents, enough to fill a small city almost overnight. The Atlanta Regional Commission, which tracks new arrivals, points to a simple reason: jobs. Since 2020, employment in the metro has climbed 8%, outpacing most of the country and drawing families, young professionals, and businesses from across the map. Fulton County led the surge, adding nearly 19,000 new residents, with the city of Atlanta itself growing by over 10,000. Gwinnett, Cherokee, and Forsyth counties each posted their own records, with Forsyth and Cherokee growing at 2.4%, twice the regional average. The cranes rising over Midtown and the Beltline are not just for show. Last year alone, the city issued more than 8,000 permits for new apartments and condos, while outer suburbs kept building subdivisions to meet demand. Anna Roach, CEO of the Atlanta Regional Commission, puts it plainly: businesses continue to choose Metro Atlanta. This keeps our economy moving and our population growing. The momentum is visible on every block and every highway. National headlines might debate whether the boom is slowing, but the numbers leave no doubt. Atlanta's growth engine is running hot. Yet as the metro pushes toward a projected 7.9 million residents by 2050, the question grows louder. What does this kind of rapid expansion look like on the ground? For every new job and every new home, there is a ripple effect on infrastructure, on commutes, on the daily reality of living in a city that keeps stretching its boundaries. The promise of opportunity draws people in, but the shape of that growth will decide who can stay, who benefits, and how Atlanta defines its next chapter. Atlanta's physical footprint stretches farther every year. The metro's growth pattern is written not just in numbers, but in geography. Mile after mile of new subdivisions, shopping centers, and office parks pushing out from the city's core. In 2024, Forsyth and Cherokee counties each grew by 2.4%, the fastest rates in the region. These outer counties now absorb thousands of new residents annually, each arrival adding to the distance between home and job centers. The result is a metro that sprawls across 11 counties, with neighborhoods fanning out along highways and arterial roads. Permits offer a glimpse into the machinery behind this sprawl. In 2024, the region approved 29,500 new building permits, up 3% from the previous year, yet still below the construction pace seen before the Great Recession. Most of these permits landed outside the city, in places where land is cheaper and zoning is looser. As Atlanta's skyline fills with cranes, the real volume of new housing is being poured into the suburbs, often on former farmland or forest. Each new development means longer utility lines, more school buses, and extra miles for police and fire services to cover. The cost of serving this spread, roads, water, power, emergency response, compounds with every new subdivision. On paper, this outward growth seems to solve the demand for space, but the hidden price is measured in time and dollars. As the map swells, so do the distances between where people live and where they work, shop, or go to school. The Atlanta Regional Commission's planners warn that every mile added to the metro's edge becomes a future tax on daily life, a tax paid in longer commutes, higher infrastructure bills, and the slow erosion of what connects a city together. The shape of Atlanta is not just a matter of lines on a map, it is a system that multiplies the cost of growth with every outward step. Atlanta's prosperity comes with a daily price most residents can't avoid. On average, drivers in the metro area lose 73 hours every year sitting in traffic, almost 2 full work weeks just idling behind the wheel. That lost time isn't just an annoyance, it carries a real cost. The average commuter pays $1,367 a year in wasted fuel and lost productivity, a hidden tax that never shows up on a bill, but quietly drains both wallets and patience. For many, this cost is more than numbers on a chart. Take a nurse living in Gwinnett County who works long shifts at a hospital near downtown. She spends over an hour each way on Interstate 85, her commute stretching even longer after the evening rush. Some days a single accident can mean missing dinner with her kids or arriving home too tired to do much more than sleep. The emotional toll adds up, especially when options are limited and every extra mile feels like time borrowed from family and rest. The system's fragility became clear in March 2017 when a fire beneath an Interstate 85 overpass melted a key stretch of highway. Overnight, one of Atlanta's busiest arteries snapped. For 6 weeks, commutes ballooned by 30 minutes or more. Detours clogged side streets, and the city's economic losses topped $100 million. Even a brief disruption sent shockwaves through daily life, exposing how much the region depends on a handful of choke points. These hours lost in traffic are not evenly distributed. Suburban workers, especially those in essential jobs, often pay the highest price. Every new subdivision, every job pulled farther from the core, adds minutes to the clock. Over time, the invisible rent of congestion shapes who can participate in Atlanta's growth and who gets left waiting in line, engine idling, as the city speeds ahead. For most people in Metro Atlanta, the daily commute begins with a key and ends behind the wheel. The region's growth has outpaced its transit system by miles, literally. Nearly 9 out of 10 suburban workers drive alone to work, a figure that has barely budged in decades. MARTA, Atlanta's main public transit agency, was designed for a much smaller city. Its rail lines form a simple cross, north-south and east-west, covering just a handful of core neighborhoods and job centers. As the metro's boundaries have pushed outward, the gap between where people live and where transit can take them has only widened. Today, MARTA's rail network serves less than 1 in 5 jobs across the 11-county region. For most residents in Gwinnett, Cobb, or Forsyth, the option to ride a train or bus simply does not exist. This is not for lack of trying. Over the past decade, local leaders have floated ballot measures to expand transit, hoping to connect more people to jobs and cut down on the region's notorious traffic. In 2018, Gwinnett County held a high-profile referendum to join MARTA and fund new lines. The measure failed at the polls. Opponents argued that transit would bring higher taxes and unwanted density, while supporters pointed to the growing cost of car dependence. Without new funding, the region's transit map remains a patchwork, with limited routes, infrequent schedules, and long waits for anyone living outside the city core. This structural lock-in has consequences far beyond daily inconvenience. When driving is the only realistic way to reach work, school, or healthcare, families face higher transportation costs and longer days. For lower-income workers without reliable cars, job choices shrink. As the metro continues to add residents, the gap between where transit goes and where people need to be becomes a hidden cost, one that shapes who can participate in Atlanta's growth and who gets left behind. The next pressure point is already forming, as the lack of mobility options feeds directly into the region's deepest challenge, the rising cost of housing. Atlanta's promise of opportunity now runs straight into the reality of affordability. In 2022, Mayor Andre Dickens set a public goal to build or preserve 20,000 affordable homes by the end of the decade. For city leaders, this number is not just a talking point. It is a lifeline for teachers, nurses, restaurant workers, and the backbone of Atlanta's service economy. Yet progress has been slow. As of mid-2025, fewer than 7,000 units have been delivered or protected, while the city has lost over 7,000 low-cost rentals since 2010. The gap between what is needed and what is being built keeps widening, even as cranes fill the skyline. A senior housing official describes the challenge in stark terms. Every month we see more families priced out. For every unit we add, the market takes away another. The city's own reports show that rents have climbed nearly 50% since 2010, far outpacing wage growth. Developers argue that rising land and construction costs make it harder to deliver homes at prices working families can afford. The market alone is not closing the gap. Without public investment and policy, the risk is clear. Atlanta's growth could end up pushing out the very people who keep it running. The stakes of affordability go beyond numbers on a spreadsheet. They shape who can stay, who leaves, and whether Atlanta's boom can sustain the diverse workforce it depends on. The next test comes where growth and investment meet the city's neighborhoods, and not everyone stands to benefit. When the first stretch of the Beltline opened, Atlanta gained more than a trail. It gained a new identity. Built atop old rail corridors, the 33-mile loop promised parks, bike paths, and a way to reconnect neighborhoods long separated by highways and disinvestment. The numbers tell the story. Nearly $10 billion in private investment has followed, transforming empty lots and warehouses into apartments, restaurants, and offices. The Beltline's Affordable Housing Trust Fund now holds $8.8 million, and the Legacy Resident Retention Program has enrolled 270 households, offering tax help to longtime homeowners facing rising bills. But for every new cafe or townhome, the pressure on existing residents increases. Rents within a half mile of the Beltline have jumped as much as 40% since the first trail segment opened. The promise of revitalization draws investment, yet the safeguards often arrive late or reach too few. Beltline Inc. officials point to new affordable units and retention programs, but the scale of change has outpaced the protections. Some neighborhoods see new life, while others watch familiar faces move away, priced out by the very improvements meant to lift the community. The Beltline stands as both a comeback engine and a cautionary tale, proof that even the best-intentioned projects can fuel the very inequities they aim to fix. On Atlanta's west side, the numbers tell a quiet story of loss. Over the past decade, black households have declined by more than 15%, while rents have surged by more than 30%. The blocks around Vine City and English Avenue, once anchors of the city's black middle class, now see new townhomes rising alongside vacant lots. Community organizers point to the stadium's glow and the Beltline's promise, but for many longtime residents, those investments have meant rising costs and a steady churn of neighbors moving out. In just a few years, the median rent in some West Side tracts jumped from just over $600 to more than $1,000 a month. For families on fixed incomes, the math no longer works. Across town, the divide takes a different form. In Buckhead, glass towers and luxury condos crowd the skyline. Between 2018 and 2022, a group of business leaders and residents pushed to break Buckhead away from Atlanta entirely, arguing that their tax dollars were not reaching their own streets. The secession movement gained national attention before failing in a 2022 vote, but the message lingered. Atlanta's prosperity is not shared evenly. The civic fabric stretches thin when one part of the city debates leaving while another fights to stay. For every neighborhood that soars, another faces the risk of being left behind, sharpening the question of who Atlanta's growth is really for. In 2026, Atlanta faces a test that few cities ever experience. 8 World Cup matches are set to unfold at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, drawing more than 500,000 visitors over the course of the tournament. For weeks, the city's systems, transit, traffic, hotels, and utilities will operate under maximum load. Planners estimate crowd surges that rival the busiest days in Hartsfield-Jackson's history, with tens of thousands of fans moving between the airport, downtown, and neighborhoods every match day. MARTA will be pushed to its limits, running extra trains and buses to absorb the influx, while city agencies coordinate emergency routes and crowd control. Even routine commutes will be reshaped, as road closures and security zones ripple through the daily flow. Hotels and short-term rentals will fill to capacity, putting extra strain on water, power, and waste systems. For Atlanta, the World Cup is not just a celebration, it is a real-time pressure test. Every decision made by city leaders, every bottleneck and breakdown, will play out on a global stage, revealing how well or how poorly the city's infrastructure can handle the weight of its own success. By 2050, Metro Atlanta is expected to reach 7.9 million residents, an increase of nearly 3 million people in just one generation. This projection, released by the Atlanta Regional Commission, is not a distant abstraction, It is a number that will shape every decision about roads, housing, transit, and the basic fabric of daily life. It is about growth. Each new arrival means more demand for water, power, classrooms, and emergency services. The question is no longer whether Atlanta can keep growing, but how the city will adapt under the weight of its own trajectory. Will the region double down on the current pattern, pushing farther out, stretching infrastructure thin, and letting commutes grow longer? Or will it choose a different path, investing in density, mobility, and affordability to keep the promise of opportunity alive? The next 25 years are not a blank canvas. They are a pressure test, with nearly 8 million futures riding on whether Atlanta redesigns its systems or simply lets the strain accumulate until something gives. Today, Atlanta's growth is not just measured in cranes or census charts. It is felt in every commute, every rent check, every divided street. As the metro eyes 7.9 million by 2050, the city stands at a crossroads. It must redesign for resilience, or risk losing what made it magnetic. The test is not whether Atlanta can keep growing, but whether it can keep its promise. Join the conversation below.